7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Hello and welcome to the premiere episode of Inside Pacer Nation. I'm Marcus Johnson.
And I'm Jordan Phillips.
And we'd like to thank you for joining us on our very first podcast. On this show, we will basically just go inside Pacer Nation, as the title says, give you a little bit of a recap of the fall sports, highlighted with the volleyball team's incredible victory in the Southeast Regional Tournament. We'll move into basketball a little bit, keep you up to date on that kind of stuff, maybe look ahead into the future of the season. We'll also look at some standout play from Kay Farah and Mark Matthews for the basketball teams, women's and men's respectively. And then we're going to go ahead and give you a little preview of the spring sports coming up in just a little bit of time.
Absolutely, and the purpose of this show is to keep our fans updated and keep everybody well informed about what's going on. As we mentioned earlier, inside Pacer Nation, keep everybody informed and updated on the sports and the exciting world of Pacer athletics.
All right, so let's go ahead and start things up, shall we?
Absolutely.
All right, we're going to start things off with men's soccer, recapping the season. I believe you have the record that the men's soccer team had. But as we go into it, the team managed to go into the PBC quarterfinals this year in the tournament. They sadly lost in those quarterfinals, but the fact that they were able to make it there is incredible. They managed to win 2 straight games, back-to-back games, at the very end of the season to clinch a berth in the tournament. And I'd say that's a pretty successful season, and we can look for things to get better. They have a young team coming back next year.
Absolutely, and it was a bit of a rough season. 4-13 overall, 3-6 in conference play, but they had a decently strong record here at home, 3-5, a lot better than their away record, 1-8. So they'll want to be able to find ways to win on the road next season. But they did find a way, as you mentioned, to enter into the conference tournament, and yeah, they lost in the first round. But any season where you can get into the conference tournament and have a chance to play in the postseason is a successful season.
I mean, obviously the goal is to win the championship, and if you, as you say, if you can find a way in, that's all that really matters.
And not only that, the Pacers had a lot of members of their team selected to the teams such as the All-Academic team, including Rodrigo Goncalves, Nathan Shanko, Andre Simmond. Also, Andre Simmond was selected to the All-Conference team. So they had talent on the team. Also, one more player was chosen to go to the academic team, Adria Dalmo. There we go. Adria Dalmo was chosen as well. So they had players on their team with skill and with talent. And as you mentioned, they were a young team. They have a lot of time to develop their skills and a lot of things to be excited for the Pacer faithful.
And another thing to look at is, they said they had a lot of academic on the all-academic team, and that just shows that this university doesn't just focus on their athletic talent, but also keeps in mind that this is college.
Absolutely.
They want these kids to graduate and have a good future. And
in a university setting, that's a good thing to have. You can not only, if you have a strong athletic program as a university, you can hold these kids here for 4 years. You can have your talent stick around and get as much out of them as you can possibly get in your athletic department as well as your academic department.
And also having smart kids on the field means, you're probably going to have a better team around you.
Good decision making. A bunch of field generals on the team.
All right, now that we've gotten to men's soccer, let's have a look at women's soccer. Women's soccer, they had another season very similar to the men's season. However, just like the men's, they're coming back. They've only got one student who's not coming back this year. Everybody else is coming back, and they have a young head coach, only in their 3rd year. So They've got room to grow. And as you mentioned, a similarly difficult season for the women, 4-14 overall, 2-9 in the conference. But the telling story of their season, 0-8 at home. You cannot have successful seasons when you can't win at home. So that's definitely got to be a point to focus on for the Pacer women's soccer team next season. You have to be able to win here at home. You don't win your home games. It's a rarity that you don't win your home games, but they've got winning on the road covered apparently. But yeah, you got to win those home games. But one little highlight, even though it's a loss, USC Aiken played in the Division I this year. They played South Carolina State, and they played them tough. They only lost 3-2. And now, sure, 2 of those goals came within the final 20 minutes of the game, but the fact that they were able to take a D1 school and play them to only lose by 1, they can hold their heads up high on that.
It's something to be excited about for head coach Hillary George. But as we mentioned, if you can't win here at home, you're not going to have a successful season, and it shows. 4-14 overall with 4 of those wins coming on the road. A 4-6 away record is not bad, but you can have a 4-6 away record if you're winning games at home.
Yeah, that's actually a really good away record. If you can go about 500 on the road, then that's perfect.
Exactly, you're about solid, but not winning at home is a devastating blow to your season. But correct that issue and find a way to get wins here at the Pacer Pit, and you can really turn this season around next year.
And that's it for women's soccer. That's all we've got right now. But we're going to take a look now at a cross-country team, a sport that maybe not a lot of students come out to see too much, but definitely a hard-working squad for this USC Aiken. A lot of personal bests as we're looking over the stats right now. A lot of personal bests from the team as the year went on, and it seemed they just kept getting better. A lot of the runners had where they started at the beginning of the year, they would just top their times out at the very end of the year. And they've got a young team again, a young Pacer team. Everybody returning according to the news page. Every single one of them is coming back.
And any season where you get a NCAA Southeast Regional Championship berth, you can't be too upset about that.
Oh yeah, no, you get to the championship game. That's a successful season. Well, game, tournament, whatever it is.
Meet. They call those. In
and I was a swimmer. I should know these things.
Come on, Marcus, step your game up, buddy.
I know I have to, but yeah, they had some top 5 finishes, top 10 finishes overall. So they're running against some good schools. Obviously, they're doing pretty well for themselves.
They're doing well, absolutely. And as you mentioned, the fifth place finish at the Augusta Invitational, a highlight of their season. Also 13th in the Peach Belt Conference Championship, so not the best finish there, but as we mentioned, you get a berth in the NCAA Southeast Regional Championship, and that's something to hang your hat on.
And also it should be noted that USC Aiken did not, they would have hosted a meet of their own. However, Hurricane Matthew decided to rear its ugly head, and that had to be canceled, postponed.
And we certainly all remember that. So that one was postponed, unfortunately, as you mentioned, canceled. But a successful season overall for the cross country team.
Room to grow. That's what we've been saying all throughout the show, and that's good. It's good to see that about with these teams.
Absolutely.
And now we go into the highlight of fall sports, the women's volleyball team. You and I had the privilege to call a lot of those games, watch the team, and I think it's safe to say that they had an absolutely stellar season.
Absolutely, and you want to talk about room to grow. A team with only 5 seniors on it. A team with 5 seniors, losing only 3 games, winning every single game here at home, getting into the conference championship, not winning, making it to the semifinals of the conference championship, but then going on to host and win the Southeast Regional NCAA tournament. As it's absolutely massive.
Yeah, that was an incredible tournament too. We saw an underdog Queens, the 7th seeded team, go all the way to the championship game where they would play USC Aiken, and they would lose a tough match there. USC Aiken, they did not have an easy road. They had to play some tough teams. They won their first 2 matches by a pretty decent margin, I would say. They won them in sets pretty well, but they were closer in each of those sets, 25-20 type of deal. But in that final game, USC Aiken came back being down 2-0, something that's almost impossible to come back from. They came back and they won it 3-2 to win the Southeast Regional Championship. You had Danielle Mercer, who rode the bench early on in her career. This was her senior year. She came and she set a single season record for the university in terms of digs. I believe she finished off 3rd in the Peach Belt Conference overall for single season digs.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, like you said, she was not a pivotal part of the team in previous years, but comes in her senior year, gets the libero jersey, and absolutely makes her mark on not just the season, but the school's history as a whole.
Yeah, but she'll forever be enshrined here in some way or form.
But the insane thing about it is when you have a player like Rebecca Martinez playing behind her, Martinez could break that record as only a freshman. She was I believe she had close to 400 digs herself this season, and I mean, you find it hard to believe that record could be shattered here in the next couple of years with Martinez playing the libero.
Yeah, she's a freshman this year. She's got 3 more years if she chooses to stick around for that long. Anything can happen in that case scenario. I wouldn't be surprised if we see her possibly make a run at the overall career digs record for the university.
Absolutely. But one of the games in the tournament that I found the most interesting was the Armstrong State game, because Armstrong State defeated the Pacers twice, once in the regular season and also knocked them out of the Peach Belt Conference on their way to the finals. Now, the Pacers did defeat Armstrong State here in the Convocation Center in the regular season, but you come into that game 2 down to this team 1-2 matches. You know, you've lost 2 matches to this team already this season, and to win that one the way they did in 4 sets, winning it 3-1, and they looked absolutely dominant the entire stretch. They struggled in I believe it was the 3rd set that they dropped, but I mean, otherwise it was smooth sailing the whole way.
Yeah, definitely, and that's usually been a tough game, a tough match against Armstrong State. Armstrong State tends to give the Pacers a little bit of trouble, even in their own home. Definitely a little bit of a rivalry there. And I'll call it, granted, USC Aiken and Augusta University. That's the big rivalry here, but you could see Armstrong State as being a close number 2 rival.
Absolutely, and a very talented team was Armstrong State. They had so much talent on that team.
Yeah, but Pacers came through. They won the regional championship. They were co-conference championships with Flagler.
Absolutely.
But you know, all that really matters in the end for them is they won the Southeast Regional Tournament. They went off to South Dakota to compete in the Elite Eight, where even though they were the 7th-ranked team, they played competitively. They did lose in straight sets, but they were very close sets. No more than I believe 5-point differential between the 2 teams. So, and according to assistant coach Chip Herring, they've got some good players coming in next year.
Absolutely. They have, I believe, 6 commits so far. And between Coach Cox and Coach Herring, they seem pretty excited about these freshmen coming in, which is crazy to think about when you think of how big of an impact freshmen like Christine Carroll and Rebecca Martinez had on the season for the Pacers.
Yeah, so they may be losing some, but they're gaining even more.
Absolutely.
And, 2016 regional champions this year. Next year, you could call them 2017 national champions. You heard it here first.
It's possible. We'll see what happens, but they definitely have the depth and the talent to do it.
So now that we've recapped the fall sports, why don't we go ahead and take a look at what's going on now? What is going on now? Basketball.
And basketball is one of my favorites. I am a huge basketball fan, and I mean, what can you say about the basketball season so far, especially for the men? The men have already had a better season this year than they would have last year, winning only 6 games last year. Coach Mark Vanderslice, we know he revamped the team, brought in a bunch of new players, nearly an entirely new team, and so far we are 11-4 on the season, 10-1 here in the Convocation Center, and I mean, there's just so much to be excited about with this basketball team.
And Mark Vanderslice is only in his 2nd year of coaching. Talk about plenty of room to grow after only 2 years. The fact that they're where they are now, I mean, this is a Pacer team that a couple of years ago was going off, competing, getting ready for the national championship possibilities, Elite Eight, Final Four.
Absolutely.
And Coach Vanderslice is now getting them back into form, and they're right there with Augusta University for the lead in the PBC East. And who knows? They could go on to win the tournament, win the conference. I mean,
they definitely have that level of talent, especially if they find a way to continue their success here at home. 10-1, as we mentioned, here at home.
And they've got some great talent, and they're really coming into their own. As you said, they completely new team. A lot of teams have been, a lot of the guys have been playing together for 3 to 4 years. A couple new guys come in every now and again with every graduating class, but this is a brand new team. These guys just met each other a few months ago.
Absolutely. And Coach Mark Vanderslice, I interviewed him before the season began, and he said that a big part of this team going forward would be chemistry. And somehow, some way, he's managed to take, as you mentioned, a group of guys who met each other months ago, and he's turned them into a cohesive unit. They have I mean, they've looked completely on fire here. They lost the first game of 2017, but haven't lost one since. They're absolutely on fire right now.
They started out the season a little bit slow too. We have to mention that they won their first couple games at home. Then they went on the road and they started to slip a little bit. They lost a few more games. They dropped to, I believe, a 6-4 record overall, but they just haven't looked back.
But and that's one of the things that we need to mention. Coach Mark Vanderslice, he came in and last season was his first year with the team, and we had here at USC and got kind of used to success, Elite Eight trips, conference championships, and the team vastly underperformed a lot of expectations last season. I believe the record was they had 6 wins, I believe 24 or 25 losses, something along those lines, and a lot of people were questioning Coach Mark Vanderslice, and I think that's a major problem, especially in collegiate sports now, is people expect immediate success. But as a new coach, you have to give your new coaches chances to bring in their guys, bring in their recruits, and get their system set up.
Yeah, that goes for every sport at every level.
Exactly.
I mean, unless, of course, we're talking Little League, but that's a different story entirely.
And it's not so bad here at small schools. It's not as bad here at a smaller university, but especially at Division I colleges. You see coaches get canned after 2 to 3 seasons because they haven't performed. But how can you perform when you haven't even gotten a solid recruiting class in yet? But Coach Mark Vanderslice has completely turned things around here in his second season, and I know myself included, a lot of Pacer fans are happy to see it.
I mean, I remember when I went here, it was in the heyday of the Pacers' success. I left, and maybe it was me. I left, and they started to slip a little bit. But good to see that Coach Vanderslice is getting things on the right track. Going on to women's basketball, we're seeing a similar trend there. They have a first-year head coach as well. They started out the season struggling a bit. Now they're back. Now they're on track for success. And
they have yet to lose a game here in 2017. And if I'm not mistaken, it is now a 7-game win streak. I'll have the actual number here. 1, 2.
And they're not beating just in weak teams. They're actually playing top teams in their conference, and teams that are 10-0, 9-1 when they're facing them, and they're beating them. And they're not just beating them; they're beating them soundly.
Yeah, the Pacers have 2 wins over top 25 national teams. That's not conference, that's not regional. That's 2 nationally ranked Division II opponents here in 2017, beating number 19 Columbus State 78-67, and also beating North Georgia 66-62 earlier in the season. And I mean, and not only that, but as we mentioned at the time, number 15 ranked Benedict in the very first home game of the season, the Pacers defeated them as well. I mean, these women are doing very, very good work, and they started the season again as the men did, a little bit rough, but have a 7-game win streak. They've turned things around. They're now 10-7.
And I remember I was sitting there calling one of the games, and I actually overheard some of the media talking about it. And one of the Pacer games, and they said that wasn't just outplaying; that was out coaching. So you look to the coaching as they're getting themselves together, and they're starting to mesh. They're starting to get that chemistry that's ever so important in any game that you play.
Absolutely.
And once they get that chemistry down, they're going to become dangerous, and they're already starting to look dangerous.
Absolutely. I mean, how can you look any more dangerous than with a 7-game win streak to start off a calendar year? Head coach Mark Miller has to be happy with the results that his team has shown so far, especially play from young freshmen like Emily Waters all the way up to leaders of the team like Rakia Pont and Kwajalein Farah.
Yep. And speaking of Kay Farah, she and Mark Matthews from the men's team, they've been recognized for their success, earning PBC honors for the week, PBC Player of the Week. I mean, let's just be honest here. Mark Matthews has been on absolute fire. It seems like every time he gets to that ball outside the 3-point arc, he just pops it in there without any effort.
Absolutely, and I mean, you look at his he's averaging 15 points per game, around 9 rebounds and 2 assists. I mean, he's looking very solid, averaging nearly a double-double. I mean, you have to admire that kind of success from a member of any team, but especially a team like the Pacers are this season. And Kay Farah, she's just as solid. She's done very excellent work for the women's team. She's averaging 24.9 points per game, alongside I believe she has a 8.8 rebounds per game. she's having just as solid a season at that number 5 position for the Pacers.
And she also just scored her 1,000th point the other day.
She did.
Between 2 different schools, she's amassed 1,000 points, and pretty nice. It's pretty nice to be able to put that on your. Well, you can't really put it on your resume unless you're trying to go into the WNBA, but.
Maybe
just a little feather in your cap there. 1,000 points in your collegiate career.
Absolutely, it's nothing to be upset about. That's for sure. I mean, that's a lot of points. It's a lot more than I have.
Yeah, I have 0. But going back to the men's team, talking about that chemistry and stuff. Mark Matthews has been doing just a stellar job out there, but other players have been doing well too. You got Christian Nobles, who's got some of the smoothest hands I've ever seen, just moving it up the court without any effort. You've got Jalen Barnes and Henry Bolton III, who are just they're starting to click now, especially Henry Bolton, who I believe he had a 2 or 3 game streak where he was knotting 20 points.
Yeah, absolutely, he looked fantastic. But it's not just those guys; it's guys like Paris Ballinger. Ballinger looking great. Nenad Milenkovic and Robert Hill, the 2 big men coming off the bench. I mean, this entire team looks really, really good right now.
Oh yeah. I mean, they come. That's another thing. They come off the bench and they immediately make an impact on the game. It's not like they're just sitting there and like, okay, we got to have one of our stars have a short spell, catch his breath a little bit. No, they come in there. They stay out there for another 5 minutes and they get the job done.
And that was a problem that the Pacers ran into last season, was a lack of bench scoring. This season, not so much. I mean, the players coming off the bench are doing well. They're coming in and they're scoring and they're contributing to the starting 5. And the starting 5 seems to fluctuate a little bit. I mean, Coach Mark Matthews has Coach Mark Vanderslice has
2 different
players,
marks.
2 different marks. Coach Mark Vanderslice has players that he can shift in whenever he sees fit. He can change players around. He can have Christian Noble starting. He can have Paris Ballinger start at point instead. You can have a bunch of different players start. You can have Kevin Schweisu start at center. You can have Robert Hill at center. You have a lot of different players that can start for this team. There's just so much talent, so much depth on this team.
And one of the things that the Pacers have, the men's team has, is adaptability. I don't know how many times I've watched a game where they're playing one style and their opponent is playing another style, and maybe about 2 or 3 minutes into the game, the Pacers will switch things up immediately, and they're going to play that same style that their opponent is playing and beat them at it.
And this Pacer team is definitely an adaptable one, and they've been such a pleasure to watch this season, and it's so nice to see things back to normal around here for the Pacer basketball team.
No, most definitely. And one of the things that I like to see that's coming back to normal is the turnout. The turnout for the teams.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, it's just one of those things that even when I was in school, the women's team didn't have nearly as many as the men's team. Actually, at the end of the game, people would start coming in for the men's game. But this year's been a little different. We had an education day where the university invited about 1,900, a little over 1,900 students from local elementary schools to come to the game, and those kids were into it. They were cheering, they were clapping, screaming, and everything like that, enjoying the atmosphere. And the women's team ended up winning the game pretty well too. And I feel like that had a little something to do with it, having that support coming back to to basketball for this school.
For sure,
has really bolstered their confidence.
And it absolutely has, and it's not just on special days like Education Day. I remember I did the commentary for the game the other day on Martin Luther King Day, and it was one of the biggest crowds I'd seen so far. It's nice to see the women and the men getting equal support from the Pacer faithful so far this season, and I hope it continues on into the future. Yeah,
it was a couple of games ago that I broadcast. Looking up into the crowd, I'm like, there is a real crowd here today, and I was very pleased to see that. I mean, it does my heart good to see the school supporting its athletes.
Absolutely, and the Pacers, we have such a nice facility here, such a nice arena in the Convocation Center. It's such a nice place, and I love seeing the crowd packed out, and I love seeing students and just members of the community alike coming together to support the Pacers.
Absolutely wonderful. Joyous time of the year. And speaking of joyous times of the year, spring is just around the corner. And with spring, we come to spring sports, which include things like baseball, tennis, golf, and a little bit of softball as well. And things are looking good for the Pacers for the spring. Undoubtedly. The Pacers always have a solid baseball team under head coach Kenny Thomas, and
there's a lot of things to be excited about for that team, as well as the softball team.
Yeah, I mean, you want to talk about a solid baseball team coming into the season. The baseball team ranked 10th in the nation. That's pretty good. And not only that, but the golf team, top 10 in the nation. Same with men's and women's tennis. They're nationally ranked. We don't exactly have their rank just yet, but they're nationally ranked, which is that's something right there. And the softball team, they're coming off of a good year last year. They made it to the conference tournament championship round. Unfortunately, they lost. They're bringing back a lot of players, though. They're getting some players that are going to be really good. According to Coach Snyder, it's the deepest pitching staff in school history.
And as a fan of baseball and softball, I hear deepest pitching staff in history, and I get very excited. I'm excited to see how things work out for the Pacers this year, especially on the softball team. You know, you lose a player like Samantha Chubb to graduation. It's going to be a big year for the Pacers, and I can't wait to see how they step up and cope with that kind of loss.
Yeah, they lose Samantha Chubb, and they also lose Sarah Monti, who was let's just be honest, she was a monster out there in the outfield. The most accurate arm I've ever seen on a player.
And so dynamite at the plate as well. Had
Clutch.
a 300 average last season. I mean, you lose players like that, and most of the times you're worried, but not with this Pacer team.
Good things are coming for this Pacer team. They've got the talent they need, and just say it. Let me just say it. They could probably win the conference this year.
Absolutely, and we remain excited to find out if they can. You know, and it's going to be a good year for spring sports, especially.
So with all of that, I believe that just about wraps everything up for today's show. What we're going to be doing is we're going to take a break for a week. We're going to come back early February, for about the first week of February, give you a little update probably on what's going on with the sports in the sports world here inside Pacer Nation. But stay tuned. Every couple weeks, we're going to bring out another one of these podcasts, and we'll see how things go from there.
Yeah, it should be very exciting. You know, there's nothing better than getting to sit around and talk sports with my broadcasting partner, Marcus Johnson.
And I enjoy it very much, Jordan Phillips.
Well, thank you very much. We hope you guys enjoy the podcast, and we hope you continue to listen in as we continue to take you inside Pacer Nation.